everyone. Welcome to this Monday night's edition of The Light Gate. We're coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast. We are on Facebook, Roku, Rumble, and YouTube. Thank you to our sponsor, Carnation. We love you all very much. You're wonderful to our network, and we can't do enough for you. And Thanksgiving's coming, everybody. This is the good stuff. It is cold where we're at. If I start shivering or my teeth start clacking, please forgive me. I'm right by the window, and it's like 22 now, and it's snowing. Yeah. I'm just going to turn it right over to Preston.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on episode, what is it, 133 of The Light Gate. I'm your host, Preston Dennett, UFO researcher and author, and a little bit of an experiencer. And of course, my lovely co-host, Dolly Safran, who is the subject of my book, Symmetry, and is a major experiencer, as you guys all know. I do want to give a shout out to all the folks who have served in the military. Happy Veterans Day. We love you. We're very proud of you. I'm going to include Dolly there. Thank you for your service, my dear, and everyone out there. It means a lot.
I have a message for all my patriots and my comrades. Hooah!
All right. Well, let me just say that we do have a wonderful guest lined up tonight. She's been on before, Irena Scott. So very excited because she was actually our 13th guest way back when. And so happy to have her back. But before I bring her on, let me just say a very quick hello to all you wonderful folks in chat, because it's because of you we do this show. It's because of you. My Mondays and Dolly's are that much brighter. We really have a good time here. We consider you all family. So let's see who we have here real quick. We have Lori Seawick from Portland, Oregon. We got Scuba Maru and Cherise Bazella. Teresa Levine, lots of regulars. We got Johnny J from Knoxville. And Jay Kirshenman. And the lovely, generous Namaste. Thank you, veterans, for your service. Yes, we love you very much. Namaste. Who else we got here? Thank you, Namaste. Little Dove. We got Janie Mashburn and the Owl Man. And Sunny Burnett with a nice, generous donation. Hi, Dolly and Preston. Glad to be here. We are very happy you're here as well. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Janie, you guys are amazing. We love you so much. Thank you, Janie. And Louise, one of our definite regulars, Stargaters. Very cool. We have Becky Sloan. Thank you, Becky. You guys are amazing. We love you very much. Thank you. Thank you truly from the bottom of our heart. It means a lot. We have Greg from Bonnie, Scotland. There.
Oh, Scotland. Yeah.
I loved it. And Bob Thorson. Hi, Bob. Hope you're doing well. You're lucky. I believe it's warm where you are. I might be wrong. You can let me know. We got Daniel Nordine from snowy East Tennessee. And Heidi Hansen, a frequent flyer on our show.
Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Heidi. We love you very much. Hope you're doing really well. Cherise. Oh, my goodness. You guys are absolutely
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And here is me saying, get your questions in early.
First come, first serve.
But yeah, we got lots of wonderful people in here tonight. Olivia and Flea Market Gold and Fox Mulder, and I'm just about out of time. Oil Painter, SB Harkin, Max Meeks.
Hello.
Michael Kennedy. Hello, Michael.
Mwah. Love you, love you, love you.
Pumpkus and Kay Hansen. Yikes, that's too cold. I'm glad I'm here in Houston. Lucky. Randy P. It gets cold in New Orleans. No, we're streaming out of New Orleans. That's
right, yeah. That's our radio station. That's where the transmitters are. One is closer to New Orleans and one is closer to the Gulf Coast. There's two of them. Yeah.
So Jonathan Diaz, Benno from Oz. I'm in trouble because now I have to get going. Foggy Notions, Little Dove. I think that's just about it. If I didn't catch you, I'm sorry. Muhammad, love you guys. My favorite YouTubers from Spain.
Oh,
That is awesome.
when?
I love how we're reaching out to all the world. Texas Cat Guy, Tim Houston, yay! And of course, like I said, Michael Kennedy's. I hope you're doing well. And let's just get to our guest before I get in any deeper trouble. So excited to have Irena Scott back on. She is a scientist, a pioneering researcher, and an author. She's got a Ph.D. She's actually a doctor. Her resume is absolutely amazing. She's been in this field for many years. She received her Ph.D. from the University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine and did post-doctoral research at Cornell University and actually had a professorship at St. Bonaventure University.
Wow.
Her MS was in the University of Nevada, her BS from the Ohio State University in astronomy and biology. Wow. And has done research and teaching at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and the University of Nevada. Now, she was actually employed by the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, as at level GS11, doing research in satellite photography, including in the Air Order of Battelle section of the Photographic Interpretation Office. This involved aircraft identification with above top secret sensitive compartmented information clearances. Wow. Irena, amazing. She was employed as a physical scientist cartographer in the DMA Aerospace Center, now the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, using satellite photography, and of course worked at the Battelle Memorial Institute, and has been sent for work-related purposes to the very famous Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and has actually been in the secured areas, including the Blue Room NASIC building. She was an astronomer at the Ohio State University Radio Observatory, the Big Ear, noted for the WOW SETI signal. That might be humanity's only signal from ET, using that method, I should say. Is an amateur astronomer and has taken flying lessons and was a correspondent for Popular Mechanics magazine. Boy, we're so honored, Irena. This is amazing. Her publications include books and works in peer-reviewed scientific journals, magazines, and newspapers. Her photography has been shown on television and in magazines. She has served on MUFON Board of Directors, 1993 to 2000, and is a MUFON consultant in physiology and astronomy and a field investigator, a founding member of the Mid-Ohio Research Associates, and an editor of the Ohio UFO Notebook. Her UFO publications have appeared in the MUFON Journal, the International UFO Reporter, Fate Magazine. She was a keynote speaker at the 2022 5th Symposium on Ufology and Exobiology International Symposium in Brazil, and a featured speaker at the 2019 50th Anniversary International MUFON Symposium, and quite a bit more. She's done numerous podcasts, such as Coast to Coast, no surprise there, and Shirley MacLaine's Independent Expression Radio, and many others. She's got a new book out. We're very excited to talk about it. She's really the go-to person when it comes to information on Pascagoula. And you can see her book here, Pascagoula, The Ultimate Close UFO Encounter, as well as quite a few other books, Sacred Corridors, UFOs Today, Inside Lightning Ball, Scientific Study of Lifelong UFO Experiences, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, The Pascagoula Alien Abduction, and quite a bit more. So we're very, very honored to have her on team. There she is with Kathleen Martin, also a guest on the show. But let's just bring on our wonderful, illustrious guest. Hi, Irena. How are you?
Thank you for coming on. See, I have one thing to say real quick. You know, if anybody was worthy to go before Congress and talk UFOs to people, it would be you. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why people who have to be whistleblowers, who are not researchers, who are not experiencers, who are not anything even remotely close to other than intelligentsia within our government are talking. And it irritates the what out of me. And then here you sit with all this experience, with all of this knowledge on you, and nobody's once from that group up there asked you a single question. Bothers me a lot. Just saying. You know?
Thank you.
All right, go ahead. That being said.
Yeah, well, we're very, very excited to have you back. It's been a long time. Our show has grown quite a bit. So I'm sure there's some people who, I don't know where they've been, if they've been living under a rock, they haven't heard about you. But yeah, if you could tell our listeners a little bit, your resume is amazing. But when you're ready, if you could tell the listeners a little bit about how you got involved in this field or what you were like as a little kid, what brought you to where you are today. I think that would be really interesting.
What brought me to where I am today is I started having UFO experiences when I was real young, like about 5 years old or earlier. But at that time, I didn't know what UFOs were even. I never heard of them. And I went into science, and they always have scientists on as debunkers. I mean, whenever they say UFOs don't exist, they always have a scientist come on and say, oh, no, this thing, there can't be, and so on. So I was in science. So I didn't admit that I had UFO experiences for many, many, many years. But finally, I started crawling out of the closet, UFO closet, and about it, and got harassed, of course.
Of course. So age 5, huh? Like what kind of encounters?
My first one was when my sister and I were real young kids. Our parents were farmers, and we were poor. We lived in an old farmhouse, and my sister and I slept upstairs in an attic room with walls that came together about 3 feet apart. And we were in separate beds. And I just woke up, and this thing was flying around the room. It was a little thing, and it kind of looked like hot iron or something. And I wondered what this was. It wasn't anything like a lightning bug. It didn't blink or anything. I can know that it wasn't storming for some other reasons. But it was flying around the room, and it came close to our heads several times. It'd fly around like close to me and close to her. And eventually I started to notice that the room was dark, but it knew where things were. And it'd go to a wall, and it'd turn. It didn't bump into anything. It knew where the furniture was. And I knew where the furniture was, so I knew it wasn't bumping into anything. And so it seemed really odd. And I couldn't figure out what it was, but I wasn't scared or anything. And at the time, I didn't know anything about UFOs anyway, so I wasn't thinking about UFOs or anything. I was just wondering what it was. Well, I didn't know my sister was awake either, that she was. And she apparently knew I was awake. She apparently woke up first.
Wow.
After a while, it flew up to the ceiling. It turned before it hit the ceiling. It went over the chandelier, and it started circling the chandelier. And it knew where it was. It knew to not hit the chandelier or the walls. It circled between the chandeliers and the walls. Then it circled for quite a while. And so it wasn't the wind blowing or anything like that. The room was closed. There was a door on one side and a window on the other and a door on the other end. And so it circled and circled, and then it came down in a spiral. And when it got just about directly under the lamp, we both became terrified, so scared you couldn't believe it, just like terror you couldn't believe, and ran out of the room screaming and fell down the stair steps because we were terrified to run down. And then we couldn't get the door open, and we ran to our parents, and they said, we didn't see anything, that was imaginations.
Oh, wow. Where was this? What state?
It's next door to where I am now. I had a lot of jobs and returned to the old family farm. It's in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
What year?
A long time ago.
Okay, I get that. Did you ever figure, do you have an idea of what that might have been?
Well,
over all these years, you know?
since then, at first, it was years before I ever heard of UFOs because we were poor. We didn't have literature in the house or TV or anything else. We didn't even have running water. Things were kind of primitive. Our father was farm.
Yeah, been there, done that, got the same problem. Yeah.
Okay. So eventually I found out about UFOs, but I didn't think of this as a UFO because I thought they were like airplanes, and this was just a little. But then later, many years later, I read a book by Jenny Randles saying that oftentimes that people have repeated UFO experiences start out with little tiny UFOs in their room, like bedroom sightings or something. And I just heard a podcast yesterday. Stan Gordon was talking about the orbs, and people are paying a lot more attention to orbs now than they did then. Well, that way back when I was a kid, a very young kid, we saw an orb, but
Yeah. What color was it?
it was kind of like hot iron.
Hot iron. Okay. You saw a real honest to God orb. People see white orbs. No, that is not an ET orb. Okay. That is somebody remote viewing you. Okay. Probably. Or another, or a spirit of something like that. But you saw one. And what they were doing is they were making, they were in there investigating your surroundings, and they were mapping your surroundings, your room. Because when they come in to check you out after that, they need to know exactly where everything is so they don't cause problems for the entire house, family, everybody else. They will map your surroundings, and they will spend quite a bit of time doing it. And the fact that they did it while you were awake, they knew you were awake. There's no way it didn't know you were awake. Okay. And I'm sure it took down every second of y'all just staying calm until you freaked out. Okay. And after that long, I mean, how long was the sequence? Was it like 20 minutes, 10 minutes? How long?
I don't know. My sister was sure she wasn't in school, and I don't know. So I was around 5 or 6, and she was around 4 or so.
So you were engaged in time at that age. Yeah. It probably took it 20 minutes. If you stayed calm for 20 minutes and then bolted, they were like considering the situation pretty good with you too. You know what I'm saying? They watch how children react to everything because they don't want to scare one to stinking death. Okay. Because children can stop breathing too. All right. And while they're mapping your room, if you came to and saw it and just watched it moving around, and the fact that you were thinking the whole way through, they heard every thought you had, by the way. This was an interesting encounter for you. That's a genuine first encounter that you remember.
Wow. So did any stuff happen after that, or how long was the next encounter?
Yeah.
How long until the next encounter?
I'm trying to, somehow I'm not getting the sound right here.
Oh, that's all right. Technical difficulties.
I can hear you better now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I hear you a lot better now.
Wonderful. So yeah, so that occurred when you were around 4 or 5, you said?
Yeah, 5 or 6 years old, somewhere around in that area.
How long was it till your next encounter, and what was the next encounter?
The next encounter, I had heard of UFOs, and I don't know, it was in summer again. It was, we didn't have air conditioning or anything, and I was outside sleeping on a rock to keep cool. And it was actually a porch. It was a big square rock. And I just woke up and looked north, and this round thing was coming over. I saw it from the north coming. And when it was almost directly over me, I started hearing all the dogs in the neighborhood begin to bark. And our dog was in the kitchen locked in where it couldn't see anything, but it started just thrashing around, barking and everything else too. And then it didn't stop or anything, just continued going over. And at the time I was just absolutely terrified. I mean, it didn't make any noise or anything. And I'd heard of flying saucers by that time. but I was scared to say anything because I knew my parents would say, I'm lying or something. That didn't happen. Well, with my sister, it was real good because they, told us we were imagining it, but we both saw it. We weren't even talking about it.
You're lucky. Nice to have another witness.
Yes. And so I was just laid there terrified for the rest of the night because I was scared to say anything. I was scared to come in and everything else. But there seemed to be an animal reaction where the animals, we were in the country and the houses were a long ways away, but I knew whose the neighborhood dogs and everything. And I heard them barking and our dogs sort of went crazy.
Yeah,
they know.
You can hear frequency better than we can, and in a wider range, low and high. And the craft emits an electromagnetic pulse. Okay, and dogs pick up on it really, really quick. That's why a lot of animals react to actually craft coming in. A lot of them, and the more sensitive they are to sound, the bigger the reaction. And yeah, dogs. It's like having a siren go by. Only it's not the sound that you hear; it's the sound that they hear, like a dog whistle. It's like, hey. What is that? You're interrupting my brain. Stop it, and they start barking.
Wow, they make better UFO detectors, I think, than some of those little ones you can buy.
Cats too. Cats will run to the window. Dogs will run away and bark, and a cat will go to a window. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Huh.
Yep.
Wow. So at that point, what were you thinking? Like, this is ET, or what?
Well, I just heard of UFOs. I didn't think much. I don't know. But I knew not to talk about it by then because we had talked about the other one because we'd never heard of UFOs, so we didn't know to keep quiet. And we talked to everybody about it, and the whole family remembers it. But with this one, I kept quiet because I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about them.
At this age, were you starting to study scientific subjects?
Uh-huh. I think I was around 12, but I'm just guessing.
Oh, boy, yeah.
This
do you remember what
surprise
the craft
me.
looked like exactly? I mean, did you see it? Oh, in other words, was it all lit up, or did you see the metal of it, or anything like that?
No, it was just like a orange. I thought it was probably something real, but it was just an orange glow. And there was sort of an air route over the place too. And it was about the same angular diameter as an airplane, but it definitely wasn't an airplane. It came and went, and it still looked like an orange ball. I mean, like if it was an airplane with landing lights, it would look different when it went over.
Wow.
Yeah, that real McCoy, that was a real one. You got to see a real one. It's real.
It sounds interesting, but it's fascinating to me because so many contactees, and I'm going to call you one if you don't mind, because once you have a couple of experiences, it starts to become undeniable. But so many of them, start becoming interested in quantum physics, in astronomy, in mathematics, and all of these subjects. And you seem to fit that profile pretty strongly, Irena.
Well, I wanted to be an astronomer when I was a tiny kid, and I never questioned why. But then after I've been in giving podcasts and things, people say, well, does this early experience have anything to do with you wanting to be an astronomer? I never thought about it, but that's what I wanted to do. And I don't know if it had anything to do with it or not.
It did for me. I can tell you that. Going up in the skies, the more I became interested in airplanes, flight, all of it. I mean, I went nuts. If it was off this planet, I wanted to know. And it drove, I literally obsessed over it, wanting to know.
I just hear this so much. We had Mark D'Antonio on the show, and he's like, I was 9 years old, and I knew I wanted to be an astronomer. He had just had an encounter himself. I knew I was going to be a writer at that age.
Well, I tried to get into astronomy all kinds of times, and I finally wound up at DIA, but they didn't hire females back then. And I would go in and apply, and they would say, you're a female, you can't apply. And I couldn't even get an application.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it's no longer like that, at least not as bad as it was. Wow, that's heartbreaking and really disappointing.
Yeah, it was, because I really wanted to be an astronomer. It really ruined me.
Oh.
I mean, I went into something else, and I'm happy, but totally not what I wanted to do.
So how did it all develop to you becoming a researcher in UFOs in this topic.
Well, we had other sightings too. My sister and I had other sightings together. Eventually, I don't know. I think Pascagoula actually was what got me started.
Oh, wow.
What happened was that my parents are real skeptics and they didn't believe in UFOs or anything. And at the time of when Pascagoula happened, I was in Missouri and my mother was in Ohio on the old farm. And they were conservative with money and they didn't spend money on like long distance phone calls. But one day my mother called one night and said, "Did you hear that sound?" And I said, "No." And she kept asking me that. She said that my father and her had heard an explosion. And so I said, we're 600 miles away. I wouldn't hear the same thing. And she had always said that if we thought she was getting dementia, to tell her. And so I started teasing her and telling her, go to the nut house and everything else. And so, but it was a real strange thing for her to do. And later, several days later, she called and said there was just a huge UFO wave that people were hiding in their closets. They were staying home, keeping their kids at home. And it was just like a war zone. The governor had seen one, and one had chased one of my mother's friends in a car and all kinds of things. So anyway, I thought this was strange for my mother. And I always kind of remembered it, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. And later I was in a library and they had, I was at Ohio State University and they had a newspaper room with real newspapers in it, just tons of newspapers.
Oh, wow.
And so just on an impulse, I went in and thought, look for when that phone call from my mother came in. I don't know why I did that, but I just did because there were newspapers, I guess. And I thought I'd never find it because I couldn't remember the date. But I remembered I sort of remembered it was like in October, the middle of October. And I thought I saw all these papers and it was just like Indiana Jones' vault that just went on forever. I thought I'll never find it. But actually I did find it. I found a little article around the middle of October that told about a sound. And so anyway, the sound was unexplained and it went across about half the length of the country and nobody could understand it. And somehow I got interested in that. And the sound actually, there were other articles about it and there were articles about this Pascagoula abduction. And I was in science and I didn't pay too much attention. I thought the abduction was crazy. But so I was interested in the sound. And so I did some research and nobody had explained the sound. And the state seismologist of Ohio helped me do research on it. And I published it in a scientific journal, the results that there was a strange sound. And it happened the same time as the Pascagoula abduction. And anyway, that got me into UFOs because some UFO people in Ohio had heard of my paper for some reason and asked me to give a speech about it. And I did. And then I started meeting ufologists from Ohio. And I found out there was UFO literature and stuff. And I think I met a number of people like Rich Hoffman and other people at that meeting. And I didn't know who anybody was at the time. And after that, I joined UFO groups. But I was kind of quiet about it because I was working. And people at work found out I belonged to a UFO group. And, I'd walk in the morning and they'd say, "See UFOs," and all that. So anyway, but I kept quiet about it. But I had a number of other experiences too with UFOs. And so anyway, that got me into ufology. And I wrote some papers and was a founder of a group and things. But then I became dormant for a while. and for some reason I activated about 2016 and submitted a manuscript. Philip Mantle was advertising for manuscripts, and I submitted a manuscript to him. Actually, the first, when I gave the speech about UFOs, it was about the sound. Well, then, so Pascagoula did a lot for me of getting me into ufology. And then,
So interesting. Wow.
yeah, Philip Mantle published republished a book by Charles Hickson about the Pascagoula abduction. And then he tried to contact Calvin, who was abducted and hadn't spoken about it for 50 years. And he and Calvin's wife convinced Calvin to start talking about it. And so Calvin published 2 books. But then it turned out there were a number of other witnesses there. And like Philip is in England, they have this English accent, and the people in Pascagoula have a Mississippi accent, and I was kind of in between, and he wanted somebody to interview people and ask me. And Pascagoula was actually, in a way, what got me into ufology, so I was really interested, even though at first I just threw out the idea of abduction and didn't even think about it, but then I became more interested and started interviewing witnesses and things.
1973 is the year of the humanoids. There was a book called The Year of the Humanoids by David Webb.
Yeah.
Something was going on that year.
Yeah.
Towards the end of that year.
I have a couple of questions to ask you because this is interesting. Pascagoula has always interested me, and I have very personal reasons. Preston has no clue I'm about to say the things I'm about to say. It was in October of 1973. What time of day did the sound start?
It started about in EST, about 8:20 approximately. I just had to go by newspaper accounts, which weren't real accurate.
That's PM, right?
In the evening?
Yeah, PM.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The second thing is did anybody see a fireball going? In what direction did it come from?
Nobody saw anything.
Nobody
They
saw
had
anything.
looked for radar and everything else. Nobody saw anything. This thing was about from 8:20 to about 9 to the coast, it registered on 2 seismographs too. So it was scientific. I could calculate.
Which seismographs caught it? What states were the seismographs in?
One in Pennsylvania and one in New York.
Yeah. Okay. Now here's the reason that I'm interested in this. I lived in the Everglades, and my cousin and I were quail hunting. And it was a thing where we go set up camp, and you get up early in the morning because that's where you go to get quails, is early in the morning. So we went out to the Gumbo Trail, and we found a nice place, and we were setting up camp before dark. We were almost finished doing it, and I felt this weird thing going on around me, okay? And she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Look up." And we saw it, okay? We saw it. It came from New York to Pennsylvania to Florida, the tip of Florida. It was trying to go out to sea, okay? It was trying to get out in international waters. And then it came back up and it went that way. We actually saw it. It was massively huge. It was in trouble, and it was trying very hard to keep control of itself and get to where it would get out. That's the information I was receiving. I'm already wide awake, sentient, conscious, aware of ET, everything, okay? And I grabbed her and I said, "Oh my God, look at that." And it was going like Mach 11. It was that fast. It just went that fast, okay? But we saw it because we could see it going away from us. It went directly over.
Was it making a sound, Dolly?
Yes, it was making a horrible damn sound. That's excuse my French. It was loud. I heard it coming forever. And then when it came over our heads, at first I thought it was low-flying jets that were past Mach 2, okay? No, okay? It moved too fast to be Mach 2. It looked like, honest to God, Mach 4, Mach 5, Mach 6. It was going that fast. It was a fire. In other words, you know that orange glow that you're talking about? That's what I mean by a fireball. It had everything it got trying to stay up. and go out to sea. That's the message that I heard from the beings on board that craft. They're trying to make it out to sea into the Gulf. The Gulf is the better place for them to go when they're in trouble. Okay. Florida registered it. And if you go back and you search records in Florida for an asteroid that went over Florida, October the 13th, 1973, that's what they called it, a big, huge asteroid.
This was October the 11th.
Oh, the 11th. Well, I might be wrong about the dates, but it's like right there, okay? There was no asteroid. It was not an asteroid. Asteroids do not make that noise. Not at all. It was unbelievably loud. You couldn't miss it for the world. It was straining to stay up. And I don't know why it was making the noise. It might have had a failure inside the craft somewhere, and it was just trying to stay up, but that's what I got from it. Now, I've kept quiet about it all these years, okay? And I keep listening for people to know what the heck they're talking about, this thing in Pascagoula that came down. There were multiple humanoids on board that craft, multiple. And I always wondered about it, I didn't hear anymore, everybody deadlocked down on the information. I went through my life asking ET themselves, what the heck did I just witness? What was going over my head? Blah, 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 blah. And I get cut off because they knew at that age that I was going to go look and dive deep into ufology then. And they told me, no, stop it. Don't talk about it. Don't nothing. Leave it alone. Because they wanted me out of that right at that point at my age. And nothing. So here you come and you're writing about this, and I'm reading all the information about it, and I'm like, oh my God. I know which way it went. You're exactly right. It started up in New York, it was heading for the Gulf, okay, came across Florida, which is where I was, and then for whatever reason it went to Pascagoula and crashed. And I don't know why it did what it did, but it did, it's amazing to me. So I just wanted you to know that. I heard it. Lots of people heard it in Florida, and they passed it off as a bloody asteroid.
I bet some people may have seen it too, but who are you going to tell? This is still, especially back then.
Nobody saw anything where at the place where this was, where the sound was. That was why it was so mysterious.
Yeah, it was probably trying to go. They can go interdimensional, and they were trying to go back to being interdimensional. It was not when it went over our heads. We visualized it really easily. I mean, we saw it. There's a giant ball going over our heads. And I thought, that's not an asteroid. That's not what they look like. They have tails. This didn't have a tail. They have sparks coming off them. This had no sparks. There's no sparkle. And we watched it go away from us, and it's just this big orange ball, and it blew me away.
So 1973, towards October. This was, again, like I said, the year of the humanoid. So many cases going on, but somehow the Pascagoula case became super famous. There was so many going on, but that one really rose above the others. I think it's probably one of the best verified cases out there. So why don't you just give us a quick rundown for those who haven't? I'm sure you guys have heard of the Pascagoula case, but I know that there's probably a few listening who haven't. So maybe
I made some new discoveries about it, which is what my latest book is about. But it started out just with these two men. One of them was about 45 or so, and the other one was a teenager. They were family friends and co-workers, and they were fishing on a pier. And neither had any interest in UFOs. It was the last thing on their mind. They were just, after work fishing. And the older man had wanted the younger man who had the car to park, and then they were going back through this area of no trespassing, and the younger man was kind of concerned because it was his car and he'd get in trouble. And so they went to the pier, and they saw a blue light, and the younger man thought it was the police. And so he was saying to the older man, you can go to jail. It was your idea. It wasn't mine. And so anyway, they were fishing, and this blue light came. Well, it was much, much, much worse than the police because it was an object. And it came, and it was levitating. It wasn't, it didn't have blasts and propeller or anything like that. It was just levitating along. And suddenly there was this blast of light, and these things came out, and two of them grabbed the older man, one grabbed the younger one, and took him inside the thing. And they both described sort of something like being scanned, that something went around them, like they were being scanned. And then they were returned to the pier. Well, they were both conscious. I mean, a lot of abductions take place, with one witness way out in the middle of the boondocks, and the witness forgets about it and doesn't know anything about it and doesn't remember it unless they're hypnotized and things like that. So nobody believes in abductions. And this one was different because they both remembered. And so anyway, they agreed, first of all, that they would never tell anybody because, everybody, how would you tell? I mean, especially in 1973. I mean, if you said you're abducted now, everybody would say, see a doctor. But back in 73, it was a lot worse than that. And so, but the older man had been in the Army, and he'd had life and death situations, and he thought he could take the harassment. The younger man didn't want anything to do with it. It was talking about it. And so anyway, the older man stopped at a newspaper, and the newspaper was closed. And then he called the Kessler Air Force Base, which was close by, and Project Blue Book used to collect UFO reports, but at that time, Project Blue Book was over with, and the Kessler Air Force Base said, forget about it, contact your local authorities. So they contacted the police. Well, the police did just an excellent job, and I think that's one reason why the case became famous. The police had him come in and separated them and interviewed both of them separately. Then they thought these people may be hoaxing, and so they wanted to find out. And so they were going to put them in a room, with nobody in it, but a secret hidden tape recorder.
Yeah,
and they figured that that these people laugh and say, "Oh, we put it out, put it over on them and everything." And so they interviewed them together in this room, and then the interviewer left, and there was a hidden tape recorder. Well, what the hidden tape recorder revealed was the two men were just absolutely terrified out of their minds. And they talked about being grabbed and taken aboard and everything else. So they remembered it. And it was very clear to everybody that these people were sincere, that they weren't hoaxing because of the mystery tape. And the mystery tape is still on, you can find it on the internet. And you can hear the stress in their voice and everything. The one of them started praying and everything else. They were so terrified. And so that had, that convinced the police that something was going on. But another reason I think the police were convinced was because there were a whole lot of other reports pouring in at the same time that people were seeing things. And so anyway, then they had a lot of people interview the two witnesses. And the younger man just said, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to tell everybody I fainted. And so he didn't talk about it for 50 years because of the harassment and all that. But he definitely was not a publicity seeker because they always say, that people that say that are after publicity, and maybe some are, but he didn't even talk to his wife about it for 50 years. And so anyway, then they had a lot of good people interview him and took him to one Air Force base and then took him to another because they were worried about maybe they were radioactive or contaminated or something, and they wanted to test them out. Well, they had a lot of honchos like colonels and things interview him, and there's a transcript of that. And they saved a lot of the transcripts from everything that happened from starting and continuing. And then the older man wrote a book and the thing sort of died down. But then Philip Mantle published the book of the older man, and he got after the younger man. And the younger man, finally, his wife was saying, why don't you say something about it, talk about it, And so anyway, he finally did. And he wrote 2 books that were published by Philip Mantle. But what happened was that there were a whole lot of other witnesses. And usually with an abduction, the reason they're not considered as real and considered, metal cases and everything is because a lot of times it's one person out in the middle of nowhere, no documentation, nothing, and often not remembered or even. And so
Right.
This was totally different because there were 2 witnesses. They both remembered it, and it was shown by the mystery tape that they taped immediately and their interviews. And so it turned out that there were a lot of other witnesses. And Philip and I began interviewing people.
Wow, that's what makes this case so amazing, because when it came out, and even for years afterwards, I think everyone was just under the impression that Calvin Parker had fainted, because that's what I thought. So it turns out that's not true. And I understand him not wanting to talk about it. I absolutely cannot place any blame on anyone who doesn't want to talk about these things. But so interesting that no, he actually was fully conscious through the whole thing, and that there were outside witnesses, because we haven't heard about that. So is this some of the new information that's in your latest book here, is the outside witnesses?
Well, Philip and I wrote the book. It came out about 2 years ago, Beyond Reasonable Doubt. And
Right.
We called it that because we thought there was enough circumstantial evidence to convince a jury that something happened. And at that time, in 1973, the police, the person that was answering the phone, I can't think of what's at the headquarters of the police,
Right.
said that there were over 50 calls from people reporting something strange. Wow. And I mean, that was just overwhelming. He said he wrote down notes about 50, and there were more people than that were going over a bridge where the thing was. And so that wouldn't be influenced by the press or anything else, because this was happening right when the abduction was happening. I mean, all these people were reporting that they saw something. Then we came along, and it turned out that there were other people that knew about it but didn't report it. And it was very hard to report at that time, because if you said you saw a UFO, everybody, immediately attacked and laughed at you, and you'd be the laughing stock, which is why Calvin didn't say anything, is because he had his whole life ahead of him. He didn't want to always, be harassed the rest of his life. And
smart guy, yeah.
So
were they able to get any of the reports on their, like, did they have doctors look over them? Whatever tests they conducted with them, do you have any of those?
Yeah, I interviewed one of the doctors that examined them, and he's dead now, but he said that he had no doubt whatsoever that they were sincere, that he could tell they were very, very stressed out of their minds and about to have a heart attack and everything else. And he said he knew they were sincere. I think there were 2 doctors that went over them.
Did they have any effects happen to them? Was there any radiation? Was there any tachycardia, stuff like that? In other words, when you say you feel like you're going to have a heart attack, sometimes when you're around a lot of electromagnetic radiation, it can cause you to go into AVIB or VTAC. And I was
that's in my book, and it's in his latest book too. One thing we found out is that he found all these papers and documents that were written about it. One of them was called the I can't remember. The puncture wound document. I'm sorry, I forgot that. And this was written about the next day after they had reported it. And some doctors investigated them. I mean, these were Ph.D. doctors in physics. They weren't, but anyway, there was some evidence, such as Hickson had some scratches on his arm, and Parker had what appeared to be a puncture wound on his foot. And they had, and Philip Mantle actually found the pictures too, besides the document. So they were examined immediately afterwards for things. And then I noticed my PhD is in veterinary medicine, but I know humans a little bit too. But anyway, it talked about their eyes being dilated, and that was a day later. But if you and explained it as because the light was so bright in this object, but if light is bright, it makes your eyes constrict. It doesn't make them dilated, and theirs were dilated, like a day or so later, which would suggest that they were given drugs or something. And
or eye drops to dilate their eyes so they could see in.
Well, they both thought they had been given a shot.
Oh, okay.
And when they thought they got these shots, they thought they were terrified. You can imagine, but then they just felt relaxed, and they couldn't move, and they were paralyzed when the abduction took place. And so that would go along with the idea that maybe they were given drugs or something. But then there were other effects that I noticed in my book here that mentioned that one thing, when they were turned back out, the beings or whatever they were, put them back on the pier. Well, like what happened to Calvin was that he wound up standing at the end of the pier with his arms stretched out over the river. And I looked up, posture and things, and you can have, when you have something that just really gets to your nerves, it can affect your posture. And like he was just standing there like that in a strange posture. And it took him, when Charles came out, he fell down and he couldn't walk for a while, but it got his legs still working. And then he saw Calvin standing there like that, just in a rigid position with totally out of it. And he had to wake him up and everything. So that was another effect that didn't catch the news or anything, but I just noticed those two things due to my sort of medical background in a way. But Calvin also said that there were effects on his car. And when they went back to their car, the window on the passenger side was shattered, but didn't actually break until they opened it. And then Calvin said later that his belt buckle was attracted to the car. And then he said his keys stuck to the car. So there seemed, even though the UFO was no longer there,
you got magnetized. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good physical evidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
That turns up in a number of other cases I know of. And it's the kind of thing that you can't easily fake either. Because, how do you reproduce that? How do you magnetize a car? Not easy to do. Wow. That's amazing. So going on from there, this is the case that just kind of keeps on giving, huh?
Oh, we're just finding out more and more stuff all along. I mean, there were documents way back and everything else. It was amazing. Philip Mantle just did an amazing job of things. And then with the other witnesses, when Calvin started talking about it, he was on YouTube and describing what happened to him. And there were a whole lot of people writing in and making comments about it. And among some of them were this woman that said, well, her parents saw the abduction. That drew his attention. And
I can imagine, yeah.
so anyway, he found out who the parents were and asked me to interview them. And I just thought this was a normal interview of somebody that had a sighting. Well, none of these are normal, turned out. But anyway, her name was Mary Blair and her husband was Jerry Blair. And they were on the other side of the river. There was another pair, and they were waiting to go on a boat, a supply boat. And he was waiting for his boss who was tied up someplace. And so they were sitting there in a car by the pier, and they saw this commotion on the other side, and they didn't know what it was. And then the next day or so, it was in the newspaper, or the radio, or whatever, that these people had been abducted. Well, they discovered they'd been on the other side of the river, and what they saw as activity had probably been the abduction. But what else happened is that she said that she saw this object flying over the river. Her husband was sleeping in the car because he had to go out and go to work whenever his boss came. And so she saw this thing flying around the river. And she said she thought it was an airplane, but it just flew around. It didn't land any place, and there was no landing place. And she couldn't understand what it was doing. And she kept saying, well, it was searching for something. Or the pilot couldn't figure out what he was doing, or he was lost or something. And he said it was just circling around. Well, then it was around 9 o'clock, and he decided to put his clothes in the ship. And so they were walking along the pier, and he was ahead of her. And she said that something that looked like a man just flopped up in the pier ahead of her and then flopped back down. And she thought, this man will have to come up to breathe. And nobody came up to breathe. Then they went to the boat, and it seemed to be like, what did they do for 3 hours? And she said at 12 o'clock she came back, and she was so terrified she ran back. And that set off alarms to me because she was really emotional about this thing that flopped up on the pier. And I wondered what happened during these 3 hours when they were in the ship.
Yeah, red flag, right?
Yeah, it had a lot of red flags. And so anyway, I stayed in contact with for about 2 years. And she just showed a lot of emotion about this thing that flopped up on the pier and everything. And so about a couple of years later, her husband became ill, and he went on, he became very ill and went on a ventilator and unfortunately died. But right before I went on the ventilator, and you can't speak when you're on a ventilator, but right before that, he'd always been a skeptic and made fun of everything and all that. Well, then suddenly he told her that they had been abducted. This was news to her. But she, it was surprising. And apparently her husband had been in contact with these beings sometime before and never mentioned anything about it, and had always been a skeptic and, said these don't exist. And so she was very surprised. But then later, when she kind of recovered from his death and things, Philip hired somebody to hypnotize her because she kind of wanted to be hypnotized anyway. And she remembered a little bit about the abduction, and that they were interested in her eggs and her DNA, and they wanted to kind of get hybrids and walk among us, she said, and that came under hypnosis. But she remembered, apparently her husband knew all about the abduction. And so that was really, really unusual because we had two groups of people being abducted at the same time in the same place. which isn't
Wow.
something brand new.
Right. It's a shame they didn't go to the police, and you know what I mean? This feels almost intentional, that this was an event that was meant to be widely viewed, because so many cases don't have this kind of outside confirmation. It's really remarkable.
Well, then I started interviewing more people, and I've interviewed over 50 people that reported seeing UFOs, some of them close encounters that made their cars, turn off and things like that all around. And so there was a lot more, and there were a whole lot of people on the same night that had something happen. So there was a lot of other sightings. A lot of other people saw something and it was very hard to report then, because if you said UFOs, everybody laughed at you, and there was no place to report it because there wasn't a Project Blue Book, and Charlie had to try 3 times to report his own abduction, so it was very hard to report. But and people had called in right then and reported it, but then we were finding a lot more people that were just the same as Calvin, that didn't say anything because of the harassment, but they said they told their family about it and things.
Wow. So the figures they saw were pretty unique in terms of what's in the UFO literature. Did the family or the couple across the other side of the river, did they describe similar beings?
I think sort of in general. He said, I think it was kind of blurry with what she remembered. And he's described him as being taller. Calvin and Charlie reported him as being shorter, but real chunky and muscular and things like that. But they reported him as being taller. But I think everybody was stressed. And I think, you don't remember exactly things when you're that stressed. So I didn't.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always said this: fear distorts your perception, and it makes it very difficult to report accurately all the details. So I always wondered about the appearance of the Pascagoula beings, because the planes coming out like that, and we just don't see many cases with that, and we have yet to. No,
go on. Yeah, what?
Yeah, I'm curious about it. Did they ever?
I thought if you were going to make up a story, you'd look up what a UFO not looks like and report it. And they were completely different from anything else, because a lot of the grays are
good point,
skinny
right?
Little things with big eyes, and these are bulky, things like that.
There are grays. There are ethnic grays who are dwarf size, okay, and they're chunky, muscular dudes, okay, and it's amazing. I see them around children, and it's interesting that they saw them like that. But yeah, they're also really good swimmers, by the way, stinking good swimmers, and it's interesting,
Wow.
So
I understand that both Charlie and Calvin had encounters following this event on Pascagoula. Is that true?
Yeah, they did. And that, that ruined their credibility, because back then, if you saw one, you were crazy. If you saw more than one, go to the insane asylum immediately. So anyway, but they had, and now it's more common. A lot of people that see one see more, but I mean, such as me.
Yeah, I'd say it's more the rule than the exception.
Who might disagree? But anyway, anybody that saw more than one, but it turns out that a lot of even UFO investigators, predominant big UFO investigators such as Hastings and Fowler and Salas, have actually reported abductions and more than one sightings. But they reported Charles and his family were driving along, and a UFO came down beside him, not too far away, and they stopped and everything. So there were a lot of witnesses, the rest of his family and stuff. But his wife just absolutely went out of her mind in fear, and so they didn't stay very long. They got out of there. But in that case, there were a number of other people, and then.
It's too bad. Too bad. It's too bad she reacted. I can't blame her, but becoming frightened. But I always wonder if you don't get frightened like that, it might have been a more interactive, more extensive encounter, and may have learned quite a bit. Because I remember that happening. Some
people's mates are scarier than they are,
right?
Which probably means that there's something going on with the mate.
Another red flag.
Yeah.
Humans are unpredictable too. A male will sometimes protect the female, and if the female starts freaking out, it's like not a good situation immediately to them because they're worried about what the male's going to do to them. You see what I'm saying? Because they won't fight back, and if you get the idea that you can overtake them, it's all over for them. So they have to be careful what they do and how they react to it. I have a question. The two men, what did they do for a job when this all occurred in Pascagoula? What was their jobs?
The older man was a supervisor in a shipping company, and he had just hired Calvin for his first day of work. Calvin's father was his friend, and so the family was looking for a job for Calvin, and he had been working, I think, driving a bus or something, and in the oil rigs, and he wanted a stable job because he was going to get married. And so Charlie offered him a job, and that was his first day of work.
Wow. So, what kind of shipping company? What did they ship?
It was Walker Company, and they built shipbuilding company.
Okay. That's interesting. Wow.
But that's one thing that my new book is about, is that there were all these other witnesses, and this was very, very, very strange for is there a break here? Yeah, okay.
No, I'm just flashing the book up because you mentioned it.
Yeah, good, thanks. What was interesting is that there were all these other witnesses, and that's strange for abduction, which usually takes place with one person by themselves in the middle of nowhere. And here there were all these other witnesses, which just it wasn't just like a standard abduction tale at all. But what I figured out later and recently, and what I'm talking about in the book is that actually this was a military sighting.
Thank you. Okay, I was waiting for that word to show up. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because they were in the area of Huntington Ingalls Industries and real close to it. And Huntington Ingalls Industries was, people didn't know it, and nobody just realized it until now, but it was a nuclear site. They were making nuclear submarines, and not only that, some of their submarines had nuclear missiles in them. So this
we all know about the connection there. ETs are very concerned about our use of nuclear materials, so this does not surprise me. Wow.
I wonder what was going on then for a craft to be having problems and then show up, because they don't make noise, okay? And if you have a craft that's making that kind of noise, it wasn't doing a display for anybody or showing off. It was literally in a lot of trouble, okay? And it somehow managed to fix itself, okay, which can happen, and then went on to do what it was going to do. And it had to be important to them to get to that point where they had to get there to get to them. And I'm wondering what was going on. There was a lot going on in 1973 that y'all don't realize what's going on, especially with nuclear, okay? Because it was being planted all up and down the Gulf Coast, literally all the way to Florida, okay?
Really? Because that's where mostly the wave of humanoids was.
Yes. Yeah,
the southeast area,
that's right.
northwest.
That's a big deal. And there's more nuclear in the coastal areas than you realize. It's all there, and people just don't realize they're there unless they work for them, and then they know, and they're not allowed to talk about it. It is amazing to me. What did they do after the incident? Did they stay in the industry that he was in? I mean, how did their lives go after that?
Well, Charlie kept on working, but Kelvin, he was very, very severely affected by it, and he went back to his parents' place, and then he had a nervous breakdown, was hospitalized, and then he kept he would work, but people figured out he was a person that had the UFO thing, and he was famous, but he didn't want to be famous. He wanted it to just disappear, and so he had to keep changing jobs to because he would attract attention. And he continued working. He went back to the oil fields, and I forget what else, but he continued working, and Charlie continued working.
Now, you mentioned that, gosh, I get them confused. Charles Hickson, he's the older guy. He had an encounter following this. Kelvin Parker did as well?
Kelvin Parker, he seemed to have a more involved encounter, because he not only saw these things that they thought were robots that abducted him, but he also thought there was something in the object that was like a woman. And, I don't know if it was a woman, but he said it looked kind of human, but I don't think he thought it was a human, but she talked to him then and may have taken the blood sample, and he said several times that he died and came back to life when he was being abducted, and she might have given him a transfusion of different types of blood or something. And then in 1992, he had another encounter with her. And then in 1993, he had still another encounter with her. And so he had two more events.
Wow.
Amazing. Now, did either of them have, report, I should say, having any encounters as young children? Because often we see that with contactees. If they're having repeated encounters, usually it does go back to childhood, as you know.
Well, with Hickson, I interviewed his son, and his son said he grew up close to his grandparents, and that he and his grandmother both saw these orbs flying around when they were real young, and his grandmother just seemed to accept it. And so apparently they had some other things when they were young.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. But what about Charles Hickson? That's who you're talking about?
That was his son that I was talking to.
Oh, all right. But Kelvin, he didn't report anything as a kid?
I don't think he reported anything else from when he was young.
Boy, my heart just breaks for him. How old was he when the Pascagoula case took place?
He was, I think, 18 going on 19 or something. Some of them said 19 and some said 18, so I wasn't sure.
A teenager.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah. He was real young.
I was 14 in 1973. So, wow, that's amazing.
Well, he really went through a lot. And
God bless him for coming forward. So he had no plans on coming forward until Philip and you guys got involved?
His wife wanted him to come forward. He hadn't even talked to her about it. She said that she found out about it when they were engaged. They were engaged when this happened, and he had moved back to his parents and had a nervous breakdown. He said for some time afterwards, he had a tick in his mouth, a nervous tick for months afterwards, but he didn't talk about it for years. And she finally thought he should write a book about it or say something about it, because he'd repressed this all these years. and it had influenced him. And then also Philip also tried to convince him. So finally he decided to say something.
Has it helped?
Yeah, he said it helped a lot, because I think the atmosphere had changed too, because, you know, if you said that back then, everybody, you know, but since
The ridicule doesn't end. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I feel bad for him. I really do. I opened my mouth one time and it bit me hard, you know, and I never said another word to another human being after that. I would shut up, you know, didn't talk. And I was still ridiculed for a long time. My friends were, it pushed me to the outside of everybody, you know. I never really had, I had one really close friend and a few others, but that's it. I only had 4 in my core, you know, just 4 friends. That's it. I knew a lot of people, but I mean, people walked miles around me because of it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I began investigating in 1986. My family thought I'd lost my mind. Like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, no, this is real. This is. And finally, you know, I was able to provide enough evidence, and eyewitness testimony and such, to bring them all around. But it was a years-long process where they, you know, didn't ridicule me and gaslight me and kind of roll their eyes. But still, we're not even there at this point. There's still a lot of work to be done. I think this book will definitely help, because it's the kind of case that, like you said, is beyond any reasonable doubt. Something happened.
Yeah. Was he able to do any picture work for it, you know, drawings or anything like that?
Charles had made drawings right after it happened, and they're in our books. He had made a picture of the object and rough drawing of the what you'd call beings or robots or whatever they were.
All right. I want to pop up a question from chat. This is actually about you, Irena, rather than Carly and Kelvin. But Michelle is asking, I would love to hear if Irena has had any recent or somewhat recent contact experiences.
I had one in, let me see, I'll look at the date here. I had one recent one in 2016, right here where I live. I was out in the yard, and believe it or not, I was taking pictures of the planets. They were real clear night, and there Saturn and Mars and Venus were out and things. And I thought it was really nice. And I had a iPhone, but I also had a camcorder, which isn't astronomy, but I thought I could get good pictures of the color of things. So I had a camcorder set up, and I was standing out in my yard with the camera in my face, taking pictures of the planets. And these 2 objects, these 2 red objects, came by. And I had a camera in my hand, and I didn't take a picture, which I just couldn't believe. I was so stupid. And I don't think they were too far away. I thought they were like 100.
Yeah, do you know how many people say that? I'm like 95% of everybody with cameras in their hands with a big UFO coming over or going by don't even think to go click, 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 click. They don't, it doesn't register for some reason. You're not alone.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I saw these things and they went by and I didn't take a picture. Then as soon as my brain started working, I snapped the camera, and later I looked at it and there were several objects in it, which I don't know. He looked light against the background. It was dark. And so they weren't birds or anything. But then immediately after that, the sky began flashing with all these flashing lights and blinking lights, and they were going from west to east. Well, I ran to the camcorder, and I can't believe it, but I actually got it in focus, and I got pictures of the flashing lights.
Cool.
And so anyway, I got, I figured that the things that I got in the camera were maybe the lights to start with that weren't flashing, but that had registered on the iPhone. But then with the camcorder, I got flashing lights, but they didn't stay very long. They went on, and I couldn't find them after that.
Were they in a long line or were they in a formation?
No, there were a bunch of them. They were all over a big area of the sky.
Okay, all right.
Just flash, 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 flash.
Okay.
And there were 2 or 3 red lights that flashed on 3 or 4 times and then looked like they were taking off from someplace. And so I put that on Facebook and on YouTube, but I didn't report it for quite a while because I was seeing if I got other witnesses, which I didn't. But I finally reported it to an organization.
One of the things that I know about ET, they have an electromagnetic pulse, okay? And with digital cameras, you can pick up the pulse. You can see their light pulsing from the electromagnetic burst, okay? But it'll start here and then it'll pulse again over here because they're moving, right? And if it's moving in a circle, you'll see dot, 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 dot. It'll look like they're everywhere all at one time. And they're half in and half out of dimensional space. So you're seeing the pulse of the light and it looks like a lot of them, but what you're really seeing is 1 or 2. And I would love to hear what, I'd love to see that film actually, because I got a feeling you got real ET. I mean, real ET, back engineered stuff don't really do that. Not like ET because they're moving pretty fast and they can move on a dime. You can do anything. But if it's going pulse, 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 you're seeing in a half a second them moving really fast. It's like if you try to film a helicopter, sometimes the blades look like they don't move, okay? And when you're filming with a camera or VCR, same thing. The film is moving at a certain pace. The electromagnetic pulses are happening at a certain pace, and then they're blinking at a certain pace. So you're catching what might look like a lot of them, but it's really one. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of cool.
Well, I still have the film, but I've tried to send it to people, and I've sent it to some people, but it's high definition, and it's very difficult to send through the internet because it takes a lot of.
Yeah.
Do you have Google? Do you have Google Drop?
And there's Dropbox and other Google.
Yeah.
I don't think mine works very well. I have to check. But I've tried to send it and not been very. I've had to send it by this way.
Oh, I'll send you an invitation and you send it back to me. How's that? In other words, it's real easy for you to send it back to me. I'll send you an invitation to send me something and you just put it on there and it'll go to me. How's that?
Well, I'll try.
I would
But
love
it takes
to
a long time to load.
Yeah,
I
I know.
just have a few seconds of video, but I had the
It's
camera
yeah.
in high definition. The still pictures I took showed several objects going. I
Mhm.
mean, but they were still pictures. They were just like 3 or 4 objects. And then I ran to the video and got that, but it was in high definition.
Yeah. One of the things about ET is when they're up in the sky like that, they're not moving 45 mile an hour. They're not moving 200 mile an hour. They're not moving 1,000 mile an hour. They're literally moving at triple or quad Mach speed above your head. And if they're circling you or just looking at the area, I'm telling you, it'll look like there's a whole bunch of them out there when there's really only 1 or 2. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's like they're out of our time. They're out of sync in our time. And so it's really hard even for the camera to visualize what the heck that is going on. Most people don't get that, but it's a real phenomenon. And the government knows all about this, by the way. They bloody know the truth of about that because of the way they operate and the electromagnetic pulses that they put out. And that's why I want to see it, because I want to see if I can figure out 1 or 2 or a whole bunch. See what I'm saying?
It was something handy because when I made the video, the whole group or whatever it was going west to east. Well,
Right.
I could use one side of the video as control to the other side because the other side the east side had a lot more blinking and everything than the west side. And so I could compare them and say, something was over here definitely because it was the same sky, but you could see a lot more blinking on one side.
I mean, Well, going back to the Hickson Parker case and your new book, how many witnesses were you able to interview that in some way corroborated their story?
Around 50, and 50 weren't all that night, but there were a fair number that saw things that very night. And some of them were pretty amazing, like there were a group of people that were west of them some distance, and they were just driving along. One of them was a famous person. There were 3 men, or they were young men, and they were driving along, and this was the same night as the abduction. They said an object went over them, their car, and then something small came down from the object and got right in front of the car, right in front of them. And it was kind of like it was clicking. They're taking pictures, and they said they were all just paralyzed and like in a trance, and they just drove along with this thing in front of them. Then it flew away, and they didn't know what happened to it. But they said that, and then after it left, they suddenly came to and said, "What was that? What was going on?" And this was like an awful lot like what happened to Charles and Kelvin, but this was like 100 miles away, but it was the same time, and they were having this feeling of being scanned, and had this thing come out of the wall and look at them, and these other people, and they were paralyzed at the time and everything like that. Well, these other people said they were paralyzed and like in a trance too, and this thing came down, and this happened at the same time.
And let's face it, 100 miles away for a UFO is nothing.
Nothing.
They can do that in what?
1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah.
Amazing.
And the paralyzing thing, I really believe that, I don't believe, I know. It's a phenomenon of fright or flight. And your body will freeze you solid if you're that frightened. Where, in other words, you'll either decide you're so frightened you don't know what to do, or you're so frightened you're going to run. You make the decision to run, okay? And most people don't run. They freeze solid and they can't do anything. It's like they can't register anything. It's like an existential blip in the brain. The brain shuts you off and you're done. And
yeah, you become rigid. I think if you have enough fear.
Yeah,
Did anyone
pass out standing up. I'm not kidding. Okay.
Did anyone else see humanoids on that night? Or was it, other than the couple across the river, and of course Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, or were there any landings, or were these all? I mean, the one with the
there were, they not right where they were, but there was another I think he was working for a newspaper, TV station or something, some distance away, that saw humanoids, but he was afraid to say anything for a long time because he said nobody believed him. But he said he saw humanoids, and that happened the same night at the same time.
Wow. What about you yourself? Have you seen humanoids or had missing time? If I might ask.
Well, my sister and I had another close encounter that lasted a while, and we probably had missing time, but neither of us remember, an abduction. And when it happened, I talked to this really weird person that told me I was crazy, and then he tried to kill us. But we probably had missing time, but neither one of us remember anything about an abduction or anything.
Wow. So how does your sister feel about the research you're doing? Well,
at first she, was apologizing, but now that's more accepted. Well, I'm really lucky because a lot of people have a UFO experience with somebody else, and the other person says nothing happened, And I was really lucky because my sister always said, something happened. So we both, saw something and admitted it.
Wow. Were
Wow.
Calvin and Charles glad to
That's
find out
amazing.
that
Well, how do you
there's
feel about it? In other words, how do you,
What?
our internet is getting a
Preston,
little
did you
blippy?
freeze?
I
Huh?
think we all did for a second. Yeah, the
What?
internet's a little
We
glitchy.
can't hear you, Preston. You froze up.
I didn't. What'd you say? Something seems to be.
Yeah, we had to have a couple of X-class CMEs yesterday, and their energy's starting to hit. There was they were pretty high up there in the X-class too, and they were Earth facing. So we're gonna be doing stuff. Preston, you're still frozen.
I'm gonna come out and go back in.
Oh my goodness. Okay, he's gonna come back in a minute. So, all right, let me ask you a question. How do you feel about all this now? What's your opinion of the phenomenon? In other words, do you feel like this is a bad thing coming at you, or if they're just, what's your opinion? I don't want to lead you into an answer. What's your opinion about all of this, phenomenon?
My opinion is I think a lot of people have experiences, and a lot more people than admit it, because it's still hard to talk about. But I think that we're just kind of primitive. I mean, they always haul out a scientist, and the scientist says, we're the only intelligent life in the universe. There can't be any other, so therefore UFOs don't exist and all that. Well, how would we know whether, we may not be intelligent, and we certainly may not be the only life in the universe. And so I think when we know absolutely nothing about something's here, it affects people, but scientists throw it out because they can't do an experiment on it and control it. So therefore it doesn't exist. Well, heavens, that's illogical. We ought to be exploring things.
You're controlling a narrative. They don't teach certain things in school anymore, not since I was a kid even. We're all sentient beings, sentient. And they've realized over the years that not only we are sentient, but animals are sentient as well. And sentience has intelligence. And that's the proof that we're intelligent, is because we are sentient. We can realize self. We understand. We observe. We react to one another. It takes a sentient being to do that. We have empathy. Animals display all the same characteristics that we do, which means a higher intelligence. Something's going on there, right? But science doesn't want you to know the truth about that, because it all ties in to what ET is and what they represent. And they are on the boat of, no, you're not going to know the truth. And they will direct humanity in any which way to hold on to their narrative. They have reasons, and we all have to. Just like they won't even let experiencers come into Congress. And which ones? I think they've had one, but he's a military person, whistleblower experiencer. Grush isn't even an experiencer. He just hears stuff, and says he knows stuff. It's not good enough for me. There are plenty of us on this whole entire planet, you included, Preston, me, a lot of people, even in our chat, who have absolute phenomenal information that we could be delivering toward data, so that we could all compile it together and come up with a reasonable explanation for what's going on. And we've pretty much already done that. We've all been talking about this long enough. There's some consensus going on, experience between experiences. We all are pretty much, the data's out there. We can all glean from it. Preston has, and understand.
Can you hear me now, by the way?
Yes.
Am I moving?
Yes.
Because what I wanted to ask Irena is, did Calvin and Charlie realize that there were all these other witnesses? And if they did, when did they find out, and how did they feel about it?
Well, I think when Charlie died several years ago, that he didn't know that. But Calvin, he just died not too long ago. And after he published his book, he got all kinds of favorable comments from all kinds of people. And at the time he published it, was being more accepted. So he was finding out that, other people saw it. But I think this is important because, for one thing, nobody listens to abductees and all that. And they should, because like with this example, we have a whole lot of other witnesses that saw things and reported it. And even when it was happening, a lot of people reported it. But then I think the other thing was just what I had in the book there. This is an atomic nuclear site where they had nuclear missiles. And the government goes all out, just crazy protecting these things. I mean, they spend zillions of dollars on security and all that. Well, if a UFO comes over and turns off a missile or something, Robert Salas, who saw
Sure. Yeah.
he helped me write it. If it turned where they think it turns off a missile or something, they just ignore it. And in this case, these are people around the nuclear site that were subject to mind control, things that happening to them, abduction by a nuclear site. And I mean, there are examples of people that were being like zombies and things. And that's dangerous at a nuclear site. I mean, they're spending all this money with security and totally not paying attention to something that's here, there, doing something.
Actually, they do pay attention. They pay attention 24/7. They
had to know this was going on. They had to have seen it.
Yeah, they knew. I know.
I mean, I just can't. So yeah, I saw that on the title of your book here. Best documented government and mind control dimensions. So can we dive a little bit deeper into that? What did you find out in terms of them doing these kind of mind control things? That's alarming.
I think abduction is like mind control in a way too. But for example, well, there was a man that was during his working hours in HII, Huntington Ingalls. He was working and he and other people saw a UFO fly over the company and circle the one of the buildings and leave. But his daughter-in-law, not too long later, just a few days later, she and her husband and another couple, it was a maintenance building, I'm sorry. She and her husband and another couple just out on the street talking to each other, and they looked up and saw a UFO. And then they just turned around and walked back to their houses. And then after later, they thought, what is wrong with us? We didn't look at it. We didn't mention it. We're just like, something took us over. And that was like that people that I was talking about that had the thing come down when they were driving along. They were like they were in a trance.
Yeah, you realize that the hippocampus is a funny thing, right? And that when you're afraid, your hippocampus is not going to store into your permanent memory something that's that fearsome. It will let it erase. It'll take it. It's not a delusion. It's not somebody else doing it to you. We do it to ourselves. It is a very physical human reaction to input that we can't understand or take, so we let it go. And it's almost like a self-hypnotic way of dealing with it. Fear that intense or something that's so out of your wheelhouse that you just can't make it, and your hippocampus will not let you remember it. A lot of people don't understand that we do this to each other all the time. And I'll give you, for instance, when you go to war and you're fighting and you see things that are unbelievably bad while you're under tremendous stress and tremendous fear, and you come away from it, you don't remember. A lot of times you will let it go. Just go, it's gone. You get debriefed. They debrief you right away after every incident to get it written down. They have companies where there's a clerk who, either now it's all digital, but they get every single person to debrief into what that is. Because if they don't get it right at that minute, 90% of those guys are going to let it go and will tell you 2 weeks later, what are you talking about? I don't remember that. Okay, it is a natural human thing for your hippocampus not to let you have that information. That's what's occurring with the UFO thing. It's not them messing with your brain. It's us messing with our own brains. One of the things that is also occurring on top of that is that we got military that know this. We have military people who will mess with humans and do things like the MyLabbers, who will mess with you so bad they'll screw up what you're thinking. They can brainwash you. They can do all kinds of things. They can use drugs on you, everything in their power. And they practiced that at a long time. I wish that humans would drop the fear factor. This is one of the problems we have with not understanding what's going on, like the word abduction. An abduction is a bad situation. For us, an abduction is you're physically taken and a ransom or you're killed. Okay, this is how we observe abduction. ET doesn't abduct. They give you back to yourself. They bring you home, sometimes healed, sometimes better off than you were. And a lot of people don't remember it because their hippocampus won't let them, because it's just too, like I said, too far out of their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I will say a lot of people I've interviewed don't like that word.
Well,
Some use it, but
I use it in my book, and I said abduction observables, and like they have UFO observables. Well, I was saying abduction observables, some common things about that often are reported in abductions, such as it starts with a blast of light, or there's time problems.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Features that turn up again and again. Right.
Or the UFOs, they don't, like with an airplane, it takes off from someplace and it lands someplace, and there's a flight path. Well, a UFO, they just appear and disappear, and they can be close and things like that, which plus they levitate. And there's all kinds of things that just totally throw our physics out of the book. And so people say they don't exist. Well, plus with abduction, I was also mentioning that you think of abduction as being taken aboard a craft, and I don't think that's necessarily what it is, because I was giving some information in the book about possible abductions where in military things where it's timed, and there seem to be abduction properties, but nobody knew anything about being taken out or anything. It can just happen in a second.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they can pull people out of the third dimensional time stream.
Yeah.
I'm also concerned about some of these cases being what we would call mind control and not involving ETs whatsoever. So I think there's a lot to unpack here, and it's very difficult to sort out at times.
Yeah, fear is our number one issue, and humans have been taught to fear everything. Okay, especially in the 70s. If you were just a little bit weird, or you had psychic ability, you were picked on for that too. If you saw ghosts, you were picked on for that too. Nothing anybody did outside of the quote unquote normal quote activity or behavior was considered you're nuts. And they went hard on everybody from the 50s all the way forward. It began in the 50s, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse to where nobody wanted to talk about anything. And they put fear into us like you would not believe. I've met people, honest to goodness people, who couldn't say 2 words to me straight to my face, even as a nurse, okay, and make any sense to me at all, because they were 100% shaking, teeth clacking, eyes rolling back into their head, ready to pass out, or seize
fear.
Fear. Okay. And I mean, it happens to people. Like, you come in the emergency room and we'll have somebody who's really, really terrified. They've never been sick a day in their life, and then suddenly all heck's breaking loose, and they're being hooked up to everything. It's in a situation they may have to go to surgery, and they are literally losing their minds. And I'm telling you, within an hour of them being there, you get them to calm down and everything, they can't remember how they got there. That's the kind of things that people deal with fear. Okay. Abduction isn't abduction if you're returned whole in one piece with no damage done. And ET, there's nothing going on.
Or even often healed,
Yeah. My lab is another situation, and that's the government, the military industrial complex doing that to you. And we've got a ton of that going on too. And that's been going on since the 60s. Literally, they've been experimenting on humanity that way, trying to make everybody afraid of ET. And the reason I'm very passionate about this, and you might not know everything about me, but I am a contactee. I'm 100% conscious. I'm totally unafraid, and I have been working with ET my entire life. and I know enough to know that there's nothing to fear from them at all. And we're working right now toward a huge crisis where they're trying to make it look like ET is going to be a national security incident. They're not even here right now. And I trigger when I hear over and over and over again, this is a bad thing and we're being brainwashed and everything. That is the first truth.
Charlie Hickson ultimately, if I'm correct, decided that his experience, while frightening, was certainly they weren't out to hurt him, and he was ready to reach out and meet them again. I remember reading that in the book by William Mendez that he put out.
Yeah, that was his co-author.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. These two boys, the older man and the young man, did they ever say they never wanted to see ET ever again? Did they ever have the feeling that they were in a lot of trouble from them? In other words, were they still terrified of them throughout their life, or did they level out and try to figure it out for themselves?
I think at first they were terrified, and they were afraid the thing had come back and do something to them.
Mm-hmm.
But then the older man, he had these military experience, and he was very, very brave compared to most people, and talked about it, which hardly anybody does. But I think both of them, Kelvin didn't talk about it for years and years and years and years and years and years, but finally he did, and he felt better about it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's the pattern I usually see with people I've interviewed. It's difficult in the beginning, but when they realize, I'm here, I'm whole, and often they've got a whole new outlook on life and, a psychic awakening or even a spiritual awakening of sorts. So
well,
yeah,
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think you're a lot more open-minded if something like that happens to you.
Right.
Yeah.
You would have to be.
Yeah. Well, it's paradigm shifting for people. I mean, up until 200 years ago, people didn't talk about this openly, or those who knew about it, it was mystical and magical and religious. Okay. Even Leonardo da Vinci put a UFO in with the Madonna and the baby Jesus. That's a big deal. There's Ezekiel. He had the wheel within the wheel within the wheel. They've always been around, and it's never been they're here to get you and we're all going to die. That is not how this goes. Yeah.
So have Kelvin and did they have kids? Kelvin Parker?
I think he had kids, but I don't think his daughter had kids.
I was just wondering if they reported experiences as well, because it does usually seem to be generational.
I don't remember that they did, but
right.
Hickson's son did.
Right, we mentioned that. Yeah, it's really an amazing case, and the only one I think that's at all comparable is the Brooklyn Bridge case with Bud Hopkins, where there were outside witnesses, but not quite like this. I mean, that case is also pretty controversial in ways that this one is not. I think there's no doubt that this is a legitimate case, the Hickson Parker case. So kudos to you for putting out this book. Yeah. We've just got a few minutes left. Is there any last messages you want to say or any other comments you want to make about the book before we have to go?
Well, I was just emphasizing that you shouldn't throw away evidence. I mean, like they always say, this is against science. And with science is defined as the idea that you have controlled experiments, and that's science. And if you can't do an experiment on a UFO, they say, well, it doesn't exist. Well, I think the idea behind science isn't right. It's illogical because you don't control the universe. I mean, there's a whole lot you can't control, and you ought to base science on observations. You can do statistics on observations and do good observations, and you should use that. You shouldn't just say, well, anything we can't control doesn't exist, because that just throws a whole lot of things out.
That's a new way.
Illogical.
Yeah, it's wrong. In science,
that's why you're a scientist and all these other, because observation is the foundation of science.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
It's also this. Whenever you don't know what something is, you remove everything that it is not before you get to what it really is. That's good science. Good science is understanding that you don't know, and you take everything away. You research it till you take, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. And these guys are too busy theorizing and saying what they think they know it is, or making a theory a reality, and it is not. And there are lots of theories out there that I absolutely lose my mind over that are incorrect, not provable, and they're directing the narrative. They're the ones who are in control, not a real lay scientist or a scientist who's unfunded. Okay, that's science. That's real science. I'm real serious about that. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck and eats like a duck, it very well may be a duck. You can't say it's exactly a duck, but it might be one. And the only way to prove it is to do scientific testing like DNA, check the feathers, everything, and then go, okay, this is a duck. You can prove it that way. It's not the experiment on the duck, it's the checking the duck out for what it really is. And that's what they have to do in ufology. They have to check out what the UFOs really are. And the only way you're going to get to that is if the other guys, the ones, the quote unquote scientists who are working on it, open up their mouths and tell the truth about what they're finding, instead of all this theory and BS and back talking and, oh no, it can't be that, and then, or three-eye atlas. Oh, that's a UFO. No, it's not. We're being flayed, I guess, mentally flayed over all of this. We need to stop. I'm sorry. I'm on my soapbox.
Well, thanks, Irena. This was amazing. I really appreciate you coming on. I hope your book does really well. Hope all you folks in chat get a chance to check it out, because I think you've done a phenomenal job in documenting this case. I hope one day they make a feature film about it. That would be a film I would love to see.
Yeah, but tell the truth. Don't do to that story what they did to somebody else we all know. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Irena.
Okay.
Well, it was an honor to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Irena.
All right. Well, we're kind of out of time, so I just want to say thank you, Irena. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's been an amazing show. I want to give a special shout out to you guys who are able to support our show. We truly appreciate it. Namaste. And Sunny, you guys are amazing. Janie, this helps us a lot. We actually do have to pay to get on the air, and this helps us immensely. So thank you very much, Becky and Bob Thorson, Cherise Basila, your support. We couldn't do this without you. Heidi, so amazing. Raul, and frankly, all of you guys in chat. We love you so much. Thank you so much for coming each Monday. We've got a great show lined up for you next week.
Right.
So I guess that's it, Dolly.
Just want to say one thing. Irena's book is on Amazon. Y'all need to go get it. It is very, very good. All her books are. All right. Thank you for joining us on the Lightgate this Monday night. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM. And the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're on Facebook, we're on Roku, and we are on Rumble. Thank you so much. We love you all. Have a wonderful week. Stay warm and be happy. Okay, here we go.